What happened there yesterday ended in an absolute disaster for Friedrich Merz. Nobody wants him anymore. The majority of Germans are demanding it. Either an immediate minority government or immediate new elections here in Germany. Markus Söder is speaking on camera and raves about Alice Weidel. And at the same time, and I'll just quote it now, this second choice chancellor doesn't even put on knee pads anymore when he talks to the Catholics. And yes, I've reported at length about the wave of people leaving the Catholic Church. Let's take a closer look at yesterday's disaster.
4-day week for Friedrich Merz. The Chancellor was booed and whistled at the DGB Congress, even though the 70-year-old was just presenting the facts.
At the same time, he was also harshly criticized within the coalition because he wants to introduce some very strange reforms. However, if you want to support this channel, I would really appreciate a like and a subscription. And now, let's take a look at all the chaos from this entire week. And there's no better day than Saturday to go through the whole spectrum and see how things really stand in this country right now.
Clearly audible. During his discussion with young people about the key questions about the future, there was a lot of unrest and even whistling in the hall. However, Merz caused a stir with another statement.
Yes, among other things, and I'll say this in advance, to the point that Trump and Merz had to talk on the phone again yesterday, with Merz explaining to him once more that it wasn't really an attack on the USA the way he had expressed himself. But more on that later, because what happened there is actually quite explosive. At the same time, the young people in this country, the young adults here, especially those on the left, just don't want to put up with this chaos anymore. No longer those on the right. Not anymore, no, not even those from his own party. We already can't pay back the debts from the special fund. The budget is being misused. The SPD wants to tax, let's say, higher incomes even more. And the base of the CDU, CSU has an absolute paranoia that the pension system might also collapse now. And this party, CDU, CSU, as we know it now, basically will no longer survive as we know it. There still haven't been any new polls released in Bavaria up to today, where things are probably already trending towards CDU and CSU even having to split up because the CSU no longer gets 5% of the votes from all of Germany, which, by the way, means that the CSU would then also be finished.
The Chancellor is not someone who puts on knee pads before he starts speaking. Sometimes there's applause for that, and sometimes there are boos.
Well, as long as he's speaking in front of children, and we really have to say it like that, in front of teenagers, in front of young adults, then applause is sometimes appropriate. But only if the audience sitting there has really been carefully selected, namely that they are aligned with the CDU and CSU. For example, if we listen to how he was received there, well, out there in front of the doors, they were shouting the typical leftist chant, which I've also kind of adopted a bit in my videos, very loudly, namely, Merz, suck eggs. By the way, that could be heard all over Würzburg. People really whistled that when this chancellor arrived. He had to be protected once again by an extremely large police presence, because at the same time, information leaked again that the next attack on our power supply is being planned. And once again, politics is not governing or reacting, but has once again made it their mission to dismantle criminal organizations. However, not the Greens, and at the same time, for example, to take action against right-wing youths. However, when it comes to left-wing extremism, as of today, the police are not really taking action. And that means there could be more attacks in Berlin in the coming years or even days.
While Merz reminds the faithful that prosperity doesn't come without rolling up your sleeves, a few climate activists push their agenda, hold up signs, and boo the Chancellor. Interruption, shaking heads. A young man had criticized that politicians portray his generation as lazy.
Those people over there were probably not invited. However, it goes even further. I always wonder why young people or young adults don't think a little more about things. I mean, that's not appropriate at all in the left-wing scene. We all know that. However, how is this supposed to continue in the coming years? The pension is now just a minimum safety net. That means no, you get less, sorry, than some of the Bürgergeld recipients here in Germany. Some very explosive details have now come to light. Up to 68,000 euros per month in Bürgergeld or 70,000 euros per year in Bürgergeld is a standard procedure here in Germany. If you have a family, working just becomes absolutely not worth it. And many people, and I ask myself this at least twice a week, and of course I know when I make these videos why I do it, that I'm actually pretty stupid for going to work. Actually, I could just go to the welfare office or social assistance office with 3 kids, and in some months I would get significantly more money than I do now. However, at some point I learned a thing or two growing up. My parents raised me, and that's why I keep going, that's why I work. And yes, I think that's really the only reason, because I was raised that way and my wife and my children were brought up that way too. And yes, I admit I just have a lot of fun making these videos. Of course, there are bad days, especially when there are attacks, but there are also just great days, and I think we all know that. Yes, especially those who have done a job they loved. Hey, actually, we also really like going to work. Or are you more in the camp of no, I really only do this to survive?
Merz remains confrontational when it comes to the USA as well. Unfortunately, his admiration for the country isn't growing right now.
I wouldn't recommend that my children go to the USA today, get educated there, and work there, because a certain social climate suddenly developed there.
And when he said that again, he called Donald Trump in a paranoid state and must have told him about it, in the context of him pointing to sovereign national interests. And yes, don't we all know this kind of atmosphere? Michael, who drives his car into a crowd, Christian, his name was Jeffrey, the German Jeffrey from the left-wing scene, who is no longer allowed to stay in the psychiatric hospital. I really have to work through this in detail. So now we're in the phase where we're seeing a spectrum that's even worse in some respects here in Germany. To the point that here in Germany, you can't even say what you want to say anymore. And yes, sometimes I would prefer to use different words in my videos, but when I say them out loud, that Jews don't want that it's against the guidelines, and at the same time in the next few weeks I'll have a visit from the prosecutor's office. And that's exactly why I'd rather not do it. And that's why the HVirus will probably be coming again soon, which by the way may already have a vaccine in the works so that we are all protected or not. But I'll talk a bit more about that in a later video.